Welcome, welcome, welcome. With us today, we have a very, very big guest. Suzzanne Monk is a veteran activist. She has worked in Washington, D.C. She has supported President Trump. She has worked or has known Marjorie Taylor Greene for years, since 2017. And although she is called, I believe it's Ultra MAGA Woman or MAGA Woman, she does this really weird thing, super bizarre. And I'm the only person that I know of who also does this really bizarre, just strange, bizarre thing, because nobody does it today. She actually talks to people on the other side of the political aisle. I got to tell you, I've done about 30 interviews with people so far. Nobody does that, whether they're on the left or the right. I'm the only person. I've been told about 5 times from the people I've interviewed. Wow, you're the only person doing this. So it's nice to meet someone who's at least attempting the thing that would actually keep America whole, which is actually reaching out to the other side. Let's do an introduction real quick. Here we go. Oops, sorry, wrong one. Hold on, give me 1 second.
You're good.
Okay. There we go. Okay. All right, so everything's working out. So with us today is Suzzanne Monk. She's been featured on Fox News. She's been featured in the Daily Mail. She has been a big MAGA supporter and Trump supporter, but she recently came to fame, or not recently, because she was talked about how she supported Trump and she felt it became dangerous and that she was attacked and threatened and she had to shut down her business for her political beliefs. Now, maybe you like Trump, maybe you don't, but I take that as a sign of the level of division that we are experiencing now, where people can have their businesses shut down and ruined because of their political opinion. That basically never happened until you go back to the 1930s with the riots against German immigrants. Here she is a little bit talking about that on Fox News, also in Daily Mail, and on her own page, Suzzanne Monk, MAGA Woman. I'm an author, speaker, comedian, small business owner, chair of Stand With POTUS PAC, and proud supporter of President Donald Trump. This page is a gallery of my videos, podcasts, books, articles, interviews, creative projects, and political advocacy for a president. It's a place to tell my story, the hard-fought tale of my journey on the Trump train and our mission to take the country back. Suzzanne, did I get anything wrong there? Is something you'd like to add about
No,
your
that's a pretty accurate description of the last going on 8 years of my life. Certainly, as a small business owner, my husband and I were outed for our support of President Trump, and we actually had many friends and customers on the other side. We had a concert, a benefit concert for a Bernie Sanders supporter in our store. So we certainly were the kind of people who uh, welcomed all types and welcomed all voices. We just think everybody has the right to have their own choice. We sold instruments from all over the world, but we were attacked for our political opinions and our support of President Trump, and we were ultimately forced to close due to threats of violence against us. And it wasn't really threatening our customers, although that happened. They did threaten customers if they purchased from us, they would not get gigs in the music industry. They would not be. They would be persona non grata for associating with us. It was really when our business became under physical threat because we were a small storefront under apartment buildings. I cannot engage in risk for other people. So that's when we decided to close down. But I came to DC after that because, I feel that the right to free speech and the right to have differing opinions is something that needs to be protected. And even though we saw our country go into a phase where certainly it has become very aggressive and dangerous to maybe speak those opinions. In fact, I wrote a book, the
Plug
Semi
it.
Trump Supporters Guide of 2016, talks about things like where you can put your sticker, yeah, where you can.
Hold that closer. Hold that closer to the camera, please.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. There you go. The Trump
Yes,
Supporters Guide, 2016 Election Survival Guide.
yeah, and in this book, it's a humorous book, but it talks about things like if you're in a blue state, you might not feel as comfortable because people's vehicles were being keyed or damaged. Get a magnetic sticker, right? It was little suggestions like this. It was suggestions like, if you live in a red state, show your pride, and it does have the suggestion. I think all the way back here, I was talking about, talk to your neighbors, talk to people who have differing opinions with you. It's okay to do that. It's okay to engage and make your voice heard in a loving communal manner. We've always, that's the kind of country we've been. This idea that we don't talk to each other, that we're somehow uh, viciously divided along these partisan lines, I don't find as true as people might believe.
Okay, we will get to that in just a second. But we got to do it in steps so everyone can follow along. This is about informing the public, not necessarily pursuing a particular agenda. Let's go to our next segment then. Let me drop this in here real quick. Okay. Give me 1 minute to find it. I want to ask you about the actual tweets. While I'm looking that up, could you talk about your relationship with Marjorie Taylor Greene? When did you meet? How long have you known her? What were some of the conversations you've had in the past?
Oh, sure. Marjorie Taylor Greene and I actually were fellow patriots and friends all the way back, I believe, 2017, back into the mother of all rally days. When we had a great patriots event here in Washington D.C. We knew each other through the 2018 year. In fact, I believe early that year in 2018 was when we joined together. It was myself, Marjorie, and three other local activists who came together. And she had come up from Georgia, and we went to Congress just like I do today. Went to Congress. There were some meetings we had set up. We were also going just door to door and expressing our concern and our disagreement with the red flag laws that were being discussed in the Judiciary Committee, or one of the committees that was going through that process of talking about moving a red flag law further into the voting procedure, and we opposed that. And so we went down and we met with Congress people. We stood outside of the meeting and had a good walk and talk with some Congress people. We also got a chance to see David Hogg, the anti-gun activist everyone is so familiar with.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, some people might be familiar with the video that has been shared from Marjorie's days in having that conversation, that altercation she had with David Hogg. Well, I have to admit, that is entirely my fault. I was the one who noticed David Hogg was going into the office next to us. They did have a lot of anti-gun activists there on that day while we were there for the same committee hearing. And I was the one who noticed him and started asking him some questions there in the hallway. And to be fair, Marjorie just walks a little faster than me. And so she was able to really engage him more than some of us were. But yeah, that was unfortunately, I think I don't mean to be an instigator, but I am very politically verbal. And like you've mentioned, I'm willing to talk to the other side and have conversations, be they difficult conversations, or be they common ground kind of conversations. Frankly, I think there's probably common ground in a lot of places. And two of the young ladies that were with David Hogg that afternoon, we actually, myself and one of the other activists with me, had a conversation with, a very good conversation, just talking about our side and why we felt the way they did, and they shared their side. And we found some common ground and some things we agreed on with regards to keeping our country safe and our Constitution safe. So even in that contentious situation, there was actually a good conversation that was had. So I'm always looking for that opportunity, and I think it's much more available than many people know.
That seems to be your pattern. That was one of the things that intrigued me when we were talking on the phone in preparation for this interview, that you were saying, I think we should stay together as a country. I'm not necessarily for national divorce. And you were actually doing the things that it would take to do that. I've interviewed a lot of people who will say that and aren't doing anything. So like, we need to come together. We need to come together. Okay, so have you reached out to the other side? No, those people are insert slam or insult. And so I've seen, you're literally the only person I've met who said we need to come together as a country and is actually doing. Everybody else who says that isn't doing it. I'm not going to name names, but that's just an observation I made so far with these interviews. Maybe that says something about the nature of the country or what's going forward. Let me move to this section. I want to read the tweets from Marjorie, and then we want to ask What was she thinking? In your opinion, you've known her for a while. So let's go to that. This was the first tweet that Marjorie issued that started the whole conversation on President's Day, I believe. We need a national divorce. We need to separate by red states and blue states and shrink the federal government. Everyone I talk to says this, from the sick and disgusting woke culture issues shoved down our throats to the Democrats' traitorous America Last policies. We are done. What was she thinking? What did she mean at that time? Try to help us put ourselves in her mind to the best that you can. I know you're not her, but you are the closest person we've talked to that knows her. What do you think she was thinking? What do you think she was visualizing? Where was she emotionally? Where was she intellectually? Where was she spiritually?
I think she is experiencing something very real, and that many people are experiencing, that we are in a battle. There seems to be some sort of great, angry, vicious battle going on. We are, in fact, constantly shoved woke culture down our throats. It's being attacked in our schools. Our parents are being attacked for attending PTA meetings. You know, this our voice is being shut down. We can be our jobs can be taken for having an opinion. We certainly see that attack. I think she's speaking about something that is very real, and I've actually experienced very personally in my own life, to great expense. You know, I have been a victim of the divide, if you will. That being said, I don't think she's saying anything that we're not all experiencing. That doesn't mean, however, in my opinion, that that it is an accurate and complete picture. What I experience is living in a very blue state. I live in Washington D.C. We're not really a state, so living in a very blue city and a very blue district. We're constantly told. I'm constantly told, why would you live in a very blue place as a conservative? And I disagree that we're as blue as we say we are. In fact, I don't think we have blue states or red states. I think we have purple states. I know a great deal of conservatives in the state of California, actually, some great conservatives, people who helped to elect Congressman Kevin Kiley, among others, who have pushed against Governor Newsom and pushed against the globalist attached politicians, or the lifetime politicians. That, you know, there's certainly some great conservatives in the state of California. I wouldn't call it blue. I would call it maybe a very bluish purple, but you know, some states are more red purple than others. But I think we're a purple country. I think we have, even here in deep blue Washington D.C., there is a great deal of the regular citizens who share the conservative values of parental rights, school choice, um, low taxation, limited government intervention into life choices. You know, there's a lot of things that actually we share. We share, and frankly, you know, don't get your don't get confused. We like our guns here in DC too. Maybe they aren't all lawful, but they're certainly all constitutional in my reading of the Constitution. So we share a lot more than we actually think in these blue and red states. I don't see it ultimately that way.
Let me ask a question for clarification, and I still want to go over the tweets, but I'm hearing you say political division is real. It's a real problem, but we basically still share a lot in common. How do those two realities exist at the same time? Because they seem to be opposite of each other.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the political division we are seeing is presented to us in a media narrative. It's presented to us on social media. It's enhanced by the use of these technologies. It certainly benefits the elites at the top of the game to pretend there's a battle. In reality, most of the folks here in Washington D.C. know that the Democrats and the Republicans all go to the same restaurants, you know, and drink at the same bars. So ultimately, they aren't even fighting as much as they would present to us. That division is a little bit of astroturf, but it does have real effects. Real people do have their lives disrupted. Real people have been injured, have been killed by radical leftists. That's a real thing. However, I don't think the vast majority of the American people are in that kind of divide. I think the vast majority of the American people actually share a lot of values. Most Americans are not upset with adult choices to be gay, to be transgendered. Most Americans don't care what you do in your own life. You know, your own choices. We just don't want the kids to be imposed upon children. You know, most Americans actually agree on the egregiousness of third-term abortions. I personally have talked with countless women down at the 2019 Women's March, very liberal women who obviously support the right to choose, the right to an abortion strongly. And 95% of the women I talked to there did not agree with a third-term abortion or a full-term abortion. They felt that was inappropriate, and they all felt that there was a point within the process where, in fact, laws could be made. So that's a lot more agreement
Okay.
than we would think
Okay.
from people on the left. It's
Okay.
real if you have the conversation.
Okay. People accused Marjorie Taylor Greene of causing division. So the day after she said this tweet, Stephen Colbert comes out, MSNBC talks about it, the Young Turks, Breaking Points, but then also Jack Probosek, I believe is his name on the
Soviet, yeah.
Soviet, refers to an MSNBC article and says, wow, they got their reporting right, which was highly bizarre. And so I saw people on the left and the right. Yes, that happened. I saw people on the left and the right going, there's no division. She's making division. Now, you yourself just said politicians seem to make division while they don't actually hear it. But you also said that Marjorie Taylor Greene was talking about something that's real. Is political division here? And is Marjorie trying to have a reasonable conversation, or is she just making it up and pushing division herself?
No, I think she might be actually tapping into a even more realistic division than the left and the right, or the Democrats and the Republicans, and that is a division between the grassroots and the elite. I think that the idea that we have two parties and we're fighting each other, that the elites put out, is something that's been going on for decades. It certainly amped up once President Trump was ran and was in office, because that's a symbol of the grassroots. That's a symbol of we the people. He was a people's candidate. He wasn't a career politician. He was a citizen, albeit a wealthy one. He was still a citizen, just like the rest of us.
Right.
That certainly, that division is very clear and very real in our country, and we have seen that division implemented in a lot of ways. Our own weaponization of the IRS towards the Tea Party, for example, it's been going on for some time. The weaponization of the DOJ against Americans for PTA meetings, for January 6th attendance, for a variety of other things. Those are all very real divisions, but it is a division, in my understanding, in my experience, of a powerful group of elites who want to retain power versus we the people. And we the people actually includes people who vote Democrat. My next door neighbor has ever since I moved in here has flown an "I can't breathe" flag on their front lawn.
I got one of the shirts.
Yeah, but
Garner.
we exchanged Christmas gifts this year, and my
Yeah.
American flag flies proudly, and they know my political stance. I'm never ashamed to share it. But we exchanged Christmas gifts here. In fact, I actually was at the George Floyd protest.
Really?
Yes, I brought signs that
Congratulations to you.
said Keith Ellison was a Democrat. Keith Ellison was the attorney general there in the state that let Derek Chauvin off of previous inappropriate actions as a police
Right,
officer.
right,
And I
right.
was calling attention to the fact that the leadership in this state was Democratic. We have to, we have to hold both sides accountable. That was my message, and I can
I
tell you, I
agree.
got a lot of thumbs up from regular folks. A lot of just people there attending. Not so much the little liberals with the Trump Pence out now shirts. They didn't like me so much,
Well,
but certainly, yeah, I got a lot of thumbs up. The average person knows that both sides of the aisle at the top are not for we the people,
and I want to ask you that. I
and
want to ask.
they know that we are both victims of their.
Okay, let me ask you about. I hear your point. I just want to make sure to get through these tweets because you're close to the source. So this was the second tweet she sent. Why the left and the right should consider a national divorce not a civil war, but a legal agreement to separate our ideological and political disagreements by states while maintaining our legal union. Definition of irreconcilable differences, inability to agree on most things or important things. Tragically, I think we, left and right, have reached irreconcilable differences. I speak for the right and say we are absolutely disgusted and fed up, blah, 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 blah. So she seems to be saying that there are gigantic cultural value, important differences between the left and the right. And she also seems to be saying that she wants a negotiated settlement.
Well, I would say up in Congress, the situation between the two sides is, in fact, very hostile, and Democrats get Democrats get heat for talking to Republicans, for working with
Right,
Republicans.
right.
In fact, I'll tell you just a quick story here. When I was doing activism in 2021 to raise awareness about the conditions of the DC detention center, where all inmates, not just the ones from January 6th, but all of the inmates there were being kept in 23 or 24-hour a day lockdown due to COVID protocols, which is absolutely inhumane. And so I reached out. Reached out to everyone I could. I talked. We had the press conference in Black Lives Matter Plaza. We could reached out to James Comer, obviously Marjorie, because I knew her, Louis Gohmert, we reached out to several of the congressmen that you saw go over there. We actually started doing radio interviews, and I went on a podcast of a known Democrat and activist here who works with individuals who are victims of crime or who are victims of the prison system, helping get people get their lives back after incarceration. And she agreed to have me on her show because we were talking about a topic that was important to her. And she knew I was a Republican and a Trump supporter. We talked about, where I was on January 6th down in front of Trump Hotel here on Pennsylvania Avenue, where I wasn't going to be involved in any out of town crowds or any of that chaos. And we also talked about this issue, and she was very happy to talk about it. We had a great conversation. The next day, the city of DC called her and pulled a $5,000 grant from her for the work that she is doing to help inmates because she had that conversation with me. So the battle is real. The battle is real from the people in power. But the conversations on the grassroots level of real people just on either side of the aisle, those are equally real.
At politician level, but grassroots level, we agree. Okay, this is a question that was asked a lot, and it was about the specific tweet. Now, when she came out with her call for national divorce, people said, well, she means civil war. And I said, no, because during the Civil War, they quit Congress, said they don't want to talk with Congress, don't want a negotiated settlement, and wanted to leave. I said she's in Congress, not telling anybody to leave, trying to cause a conversation in Congress. And I bet she's looking for a negotiated settlement. The very next day, she literally said negotiated settlement. So does Marjorie Taylor Greene secretly mean civil war and let's shoot each other? Or is she actually talking about some sort of negotiation and dialogue in Congress? Which one?
I don't think I don't think Marjorie or anyone is advocating for a civil war. Nor do I think one is possible. Frankly, as an activist, I see that most people aren't willing to make a phone call to change the state of their country. I'm pretty sure no one's getting up off the couch or off their phones in order to take up arms and start shooting at each other. It seems a little bit unrealistic that anyone would think that that is even a near possibility. But we do see a lot of conflict, and I think she's right to bring up the conversation. I think she's right to address the very vicious divide we are being presented with as the narrative, and certainly a vicious divide that is being implemented by those in power. I think she's right to talk about that, and I think it needs to be talked about in Congress. Ultimately, I think that it's not the Marjories of the world that are standing down on effort. I don't think that it's Marjorie's not doing enough is the problem. I think Marjorie's doing a great thing by mentioning it, by bringing the conversation up. I think we, the people, are the ones who aren't doing enough. We, the people, are the ones who need to be reaching out to our politicians and saying we want them to work across the aisle. We, the people, need to be the ones who are reaching out to Congress members and our elected officials who might be in the other party from us, but still are our representatives. But we are choosing not to do that. We're allowing this idea of divide in our minds to presume that we have no result available from people who don't share our party affiliation. And I can tell you from direct personal experience, that is false. That we actually, your representatives will in fact cooperate and engage you if you're willing to be consistent, if you're willing to be respectful, if you're willing to engage the citizen government process in a way that honors that process, you will find there's a lot of results to be had.
And that's why we call this activist Suzzanne Monk a message of hope. Let me ask you about this last tweet. Americans support a national divorce into red and blue states with a small limited government. This is the temperature of America. Is she lying?
I don't think she's lying. And I think that the parties, I know, I don't think she's lying. And I know that the political parties, the Republican Party, the Democrat Party, have engaged in this, in really enhancing this divide. It's almost like they divided up the red states and the blue states themselves. And the Republican Party has frequently abandoned urban environment, the very blue cities, if you will. They have very weak contingents there, and they have not in any way tried to present an alternative. I know my DC GOP here is very ineffective, and but for my nagging and pleading and complaining and rebranding ourselves, they would not have had such a full ticket as they did this year. By getting involved with my local party, by pressuring them and pushing them to actually present an alternative and to be proud of their values, we have in fact seen a year where we had a full, 6 individuals on the ticket. We that's certainly more than we've had. We even had a candidate for mayor this year, which we haven't had in many years. So people need to get involved and get engaged. And I say this to Democrats as well as Republicans. I actually look forward to what I believe is inevitable, where Democrats so frustrated with the result of their upper leadership, and they're already talking about it. There's already been buzz about Joe Biden, people wanting Joe Biden to step aside so that somebody else can run within their own party. There's a lot of frustration there.
Kamala.
They've said it many times. So I am looking forward to the time when the regular grassroots Democrat does exactly what we've seen on the Republican side. It is very difficult for those of us who share conservative values to decide to switch parties. But it is certainly something doable to fix the party we have. And I suspect the Democrats are going to do the exact same thing. And I suspect that the leadership at the top of the Democrat Party right now is going to have an opportunity to see what their citizens also want. And I'm pretty sure it's not this woke agenda, because I live in and around Democrats. I'm pretty sure what they want are safe streets, good schools, good hospitals. They want to be able to trust that 911 is going to show up if something happens. They don't want their kids getting shot. They want the stores to be able to stay open because crime is reasonably controlled. They don't want all their dollars and taxes going to ridiculous projects that don't benefit anybody. They don't want to throw all their money away to foreign governments without accountability. We all want that. We all want that. So ultimately, I think we, the citizenry, we share a lot of those things, and I look forward to watching the same process we've seen since Donald Trump came into the Republican Party back in 2016. I look forward to that happening in the Democrat Party as well, and we're already starting to see the signs.
I'd like to ask you, I want to show you a couple slides, and then I'd like to ask you your opinion. Is that okay? Okay, it's going to take me 1 minute. I just want to show you the information, and then I'm going to ask you, what is your interpretation of this data?
Sure.
Okay. So the first thing I want to show is this is a survey from 2021, Brightline Research, and it showed 47% of liberals in the West Coast supported secession. It also showed 66% of all Republicans in the South supported secession. That's 2/3 of Republicans in the South and almost 50% of all Democrats on the West Coast. That was 2 years ago. Additionally, there was another survey in 2021 that showed, here we go, 80% of Biden voters and 84% of Trump voters feel elected officials from the other party are a clear and present danger to the USA. 74% of Biden voters and 78% of Trump voters feel voters from the other party are a clear and present danger to the United States. That was 2 years ago. Finally, we can move to this NPR article in 2008, The Big Sort, Red and Blue Divide Neighbors Too. And they followed up the article in 2022. Now, this is talking about a book called The Big Sort, where basically people are dividing themselves up into separate communities based upon political ideology. It's been going on for over a decade. The New York Times talked about the effects of that in 2016. They were talking about how we don't have competitive elections. So if you look at the map at the top far left, it's mostly half gray. The gray areas are areas where you could run as a Republican or Democrat, and you had a 50-50 chance of winning. The red areas are don't even bother running as a Democrat because they'll never elect you. Blue is don't even bother running as a Republican. They'll never elect you. You can see from 1992 to 2012 and then 2016, the gray is almost completely wiped out over the last 2 decades, meaning we've moved to mostly landslide election counties with little ability for people to choose between the two. You can also look at the presidential election maps from 2000 to 2020. And in the 2000 map on the left, you'll see light pink and light blue. And then on the map on the right in 2020, you'll see dark red and dark blue, meaning people have stopped entertaining the other side and they're hardcore Republican or hardcore Democrat over the last 20 years. This map also shows that. Here's an article: for most Americans, the local presidential vote was a landslide election. Big sort continues also as a driving force. This is one of my favorite ones. And it, oops, sorry. When I get back to that, sorry about that. 1 second, we'll be right there. Apologies. Okay, here we go. So percentage of counties where a presidential county won 80% or more of a two-party vote. Between 2004 and 2020, it's dramatically jumped from 5% to 20%. Politics has divided the country. The Wall Street Journal talked about that, and they were talking about this. If you go back to 1974, the amount of people who identified themselves as hardcore conservative in 1974 was 45%. Now it's 76%. In 1974, it was 28% as hardcore liberal. Now it's 59%. Mostly unfavorable views of the other party. Here's some more on the election landslide counties going back to the 1980s to 2020. Here's 538 saying the same thing. Purple America's all but disappeared. And finally, one of my favorite ones: people will not date somebody outside of their political ideology. It's gone from about a third to more than half in 2020. Finally, Pew Research Center 2017, partisan divide on political issues grows wider. And this shows that people's opinions on division between race, religion, attendance, college, education, age, gender hasn't changed, but party affiliation and how I feel differently about you has gone from 15 to 36 percentage points between 1994 and 2007. A lot of those surveys are talking to voters and real people and average people on the ground, and they are saying, I don't trust the other side, and I'm much more politically polarized than I was 2 decades ago. Can we say that the division is only at the political elite level and not found at the people level?
Well, I would certainly say that the science that they have done did a very good job at depicting the narrative that that has been imposed upon us, that has been told to us, that has been utilized against us for the entire process. And I think as someone who studied statistics in college and I'm familiar with how you design those kinds of questionnaires and tests, there's a lot of ways to make sure that you can make this picture. I would also find that there's probably a lot of ways to make the other picture, but you don't see those headlines. And what I do know, if you could scroll back to the map where it has the two red, and it got redder as we go. I'd like to mention that. Yeah, this one here. This is fine. So what we see when you stand, when individuals of the opposing party or the minority party continue to stand down in the face of a overwhelming majority of the other party, the ideas of that other party become in a bubble. So even here in deep Washington, D.C., I've watched a Republican candidate get up on a debate stage, start talking about simple government limiting solutions. And I've watched even very liberal leaning individuals start to move that conversation in a debate right in front of our eyes in real time back towards the right. The problem is that the party has stood down from having those conversations. So we see that echo chamber of liberalism in these blue cities have this effect, and frankly, the echo chamber of the red states has this same effect on the mindset of the people. But in reality, as I can say right now, when you start engaging individuals with a different idea, you start to see that people are willing to come towards a solution. We want solutions more than we want division. And that is pretty ubiquitous amongst voters. So yeah, I believe a lot of these surveys, a lot of these headlines, they're doing a great job selling the division narrative. They certainly want us all at each other's throats, and it has gotten worse. And frankly, COVID was yet another opportunity to divide us against masks and not masks, vaccinated and not vaccinated. It's another opportunity to create these divides when in reality, we are human beings who are all seeking to have healthy lives, healthy families, healthy jobs, healthy businesses, and healthy communities. And there is a vast amount of agreement on what those things mean.
So I think you said the polls could be skewed. People can make polls appear what they want. Maybe there was a focus on this kind of data. So all these data sources over the last couple of years from multiple different agencies who are well known for their reputation could be skewed. And that's why we're getting this impression showing people are divided when they're really not as divided. Is that a
Well, I
fair
don't know if maybe
statement?
skewed, but if you can measure something in one component of society, but you're not measuring another thing. I would love to see
Okay.
these same organizations come up with a list of questions that tries to find out where there's connection, where there's agreement. Instead of asking questions, do you find the other party completely unacceptable? Ask the question, do you know anybody from the other party? Now, frankly, there are some that have done those studies. And they found that we are starting to know people a little less, but I think that's an effect of this narrative being pushed upon us more
Oh,
than the narrative
sure,
being a result of that. I'm not sure that they're capturing
sure.
a real thing, because I think if we measured how many times we're actually having conversations where we agree, and I will tell you, there's an organization I work with called Go USA. They are a ranking system where they're a nonpartisan ranking system that ranks politicians, and they have gone through and found the research to find uh, topics, the things we agree on about
Right.
70% of the time. And this is how we're measuring. They're measuring we the people against the politicians, really. How are the politicians serving the will of the people? And in almost in so many issues, in school issues, in economic issues, with regards to individual rights, with regards to how we should be operating our citizen government, we're really in about 70%, maybe even more agreement a lot of the time, even on contentious issues, frankly. Gun issues, we have a lot more agreement than the headlines will show us. Abortion, actually, we have a lot more agreement, as I talked about, than the headlines want to show us. So if they would do studies on that stuff, I think they'd probably find that result as well. I think you can measure both things. You can measure how angry we are at each other, but you could also be measuring how much we actually agree and how much unity there ultimately is.
They did, just to back you up. So when Marjorie Taylor Greene made this comment, there was a lot of slams and insults on her in the news. And then about a week later, they go, oh, new poll. 70% of Republicans and 70% of Democrats all completely agree she's stupid and National Divorce is stupid. So I noticed that they will release polls showing how much everybody agrees when they're trying to slam an idea and shut it down. So I have seen the polls you're talking about where you name some issue and they don't want it talked about. There will be a poll within a week saying everybody agrees hot dogs taste bad. Cats should not marry dogs. We're all against national divorce. And I'm like, isn't it convenient that the moment a controversial topic comes out, they somehow have a poll showing incredible national unity within 1 week? And yet I never saw that poll before, and I never saw those questions asked before, which backs up what you're saying. Why don't these ask these questions? And how come they don't ask them until it seems like the conversation about national divorce is getting going, and then they're very quick to jump on board and go, no, 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 everybody agrees. We all love each other. We all agree. And the thing that grabs me is, why did you guys forget all the national news stories the last couple of years? So the same people who were talking about division for years, the day after Marjorie Taylor makes that tweet, total amnesia. I never reported on political division. I've never talked about it. We're not divided. There's no data showing that. We love each other. And I'm like, okay, when I see one of you do that, fine. But when I see five of you forget articles and news headlines that you damn well covered a year, 2 years before, it tells me there's agendaed reporting and they don't want us to know the whole story, which makes me think that they're trying to make this not seem as real as it actually is.
Well, and therein lies the value, I think, of Marjorie raising this topic and raising this conversation. Because look how quickly, when she starts talking about the divide that they've been talking about for years, how quickly they are to speak a different narrative. So it needs to be talked about. We need to discuss the division that is going on. Whether it is being manufactured, as I think a significant percentage of it is. I think there's a lot of things that we, the people, are experiencing. Certainly there's real radical leftism on the city streets, even here in DC. We've seen the results of that, and we've seen the results of that across the country with various riots throughout 2020. Throughout 2016, we saw the same thing. People who were very upset about Trump, particularly in California. You guys got a lot of that out there.
Absolutely, we did. I was there the day after he was elected in Sacramento. The entire lawn of the Capitol building, and you can look it up on Google, which is pretty big, was covered with people. It's never covered with people. It was all people, and they were literally on their hands and knees weeping. You could hear the crying a block away. There were people marching around the streets, and there were about 100 cops, and every single cop had his hand on his gun like this because they were terrified about what was going to happen next. People lost their, well, let's keep it PG, but I was there. They had a full psychotic break the day after Trump was elected. I saw it with my own eyes.
Well, and that was created out of a vicious media slandering campaign to convince all of America that some crazy radical, whatever word of the day, racist, fascist, Nazi, whatever they wanted to call him at the moment, had taken over the country. The media gave them that opinion. They didn't come up with it themselves. The American people didn't come up with the fact that Donald Trump was a Nazi when they were watching him in the millions on the Celebrity Apprentice, and we all know that. They didn't come up with that idea that he was a racist when he was building hotels back in New York, and he was quite the man about town, and all the celebrity papers loved to talk about him. None of that was the case until he ran for president and he ran against these elites. And then he became all of these horrible things, and that was pumped 24/7 through every media outlet that could. And frankly, Fox helped and did their part to spread that narrative. And it created those wailing people. It created those wailing people, and frankly, it created a lot of work for people like me and like you who like to talk to people across the aisle. But ultimately, that's where walkaway came from. That's where so much of the frustration came from, is that people just got fed up of the madness of the name calling and this idea that we're all going to accept that. Something changed very profoundly in 2016. We used to always be able to call the politicians names. That politician was this or that,
Right,
but it didn't reflect down onto the voter. In 2016, this dramatically changed. You were personally attacked because of who you voted for, and that was a different agenda. And frankly, from what I have studied of the attempt of globalists to use anti-government radical radical communities to try to break down the United States government, I think that was a direct psychological attack on the American people to create this idea that we need to hate each other, that we need to fear each other because we are completely dangerous. We're Nazis and fascists and communists and radicals. That I think that was imposed upon us because it's been very effective to prevent the American people from joining together and opposing so many of the globalist agendas we've seen, such as the climate change agenda, the TPP project, the what we're seeing now with the attempt to take us all into World War III against Russia. There's a lot of the handover of our health systems to the World Health Organization. There is certainly a push by a small group of very wealthy people who want to obtain as much control over the planet as possible, and nations stand in the way. And the American nation has stood in the way the most for the longest. And so they've created an opportunity to try to weaken us through divide. But I think that is a tactic, not a inherent quality of the American people.
I'll back you up on another point. So I remember the Ukraine war, and the narrative was the Republicans aren't for supporting the Ukraine war because they're all secretly in bed with Russia. And then all of a sudden comes this viral video of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez meeting her constituents, and they are yelling and screaming over her, "Get the hell out of Ukraine." Total counter narrative. Total counter narrative. Oh, this is only Republicans and conservatives who do this. No, AOC was shouted over at her own meeting by her own people saying, "What the hell are you doing?"
Yeah.
So you're right. And that they showed that one day, and then they kind of quietly tucked that away and went back to, well, it's only Republicans. So you're right. There's a lack of interest in showing the other side. Let me ask you a quick question, though. before I get to the last part. When we talked, you had said, hey, I actually try to reach out to the other side. And I said, me too. And I've interviewed about 20 to 30 people, and I'm the only person, and I was glad to meet you because you're the only other person who I thought was doing this. How common is this behavior? Do you know lots of people doing what you're doing, or are you like me?
No, I think I'm kind of a trendsetter on this issue. But there is a lot of movement, I would say, in this direction in what I call the urban Republican or urban conservative movement. Donald Trump is an urban conservative, right? He is an urban Republican, if you will. He comes from New York. He's a New Yorker. And certainly that is as activated in our country, in my opinion, a lot of engagement and excitement and enthusiasm in Republicans and conservatives in the cities, in these deep blue cities, to stand up and to speak out. And in part, it comes from the idea that we get attacked if we wear the wrong color hat, right? If we wear a MAGA hat, we might end up getting, into an altercation. At some point, that resistance even engages the desire of people to stand up for their opinions and their beliefs. And frankly, we're seeing that. We're seeing Republicans run in Baltimore. We're seeing Republicans run in Illinois. We're seeing Republicans get into Miami and these blue cities. It's something that the grassroots is doing.
Virginia.
We're frankly begging the party to do it. And hopefully they start to listen to their constituents and actually get involved in these blue areas. But it's happening, and it's happening more and more. So I think the moss is not growing on this stone. This stone is rolling, and hopefully the people in charge will catch on before they get rolled over.
I will give you one point, and this is all I'm going to say. I don't want to talk about it. It's because it could get real controversial, and I don't want to go there. But I would encourage you to look at TikTok videos where they interview members of the African American community in their neighborhoods. And these videos came out last year. And they just it's an African American person walks up to another African American person, and they just look at them and go, so Trump or Biden? And the number of African American people in these videos who do this, oh man, why are you asking me this on the streets? They don't want to answer. They don't want to answer the question.
I have had a great conversation actually here in DC. I'll tell you that's true. I wear my Trump gear out down in the streets of DC all the time. And we are often called the Chocolate City. We're about 49% Black here in Washington, DC. And there was this funny two guys. He saw my Trump shirt. He's like, yes, man, that's what I'm talking about. He was a total Trump supporter, but his friend was like, oh, man, you mess with Trump. And he's like, yeah, I do mess with Trump. So there was this whole fun conversation they had about it. Look, they tag F Biden on my dumpsters over here, okay, on my side of the river. So there is no love lost here in the Black Democrat community that I live in.
I've seen that.
For Joe Biden, and certainly this is what I'm talking about. Even the Democrats are frustrated, and I can tell you they're getting tired of being taken advantage of and told what to do and told to sit down and take whatever crazy policies come out of these elites. Just as you've seen, they're tired of spending their money overseas in the Ukraine. And I have those conversations with everybody, and nobody likes paying 75 cents a piece for an egg. So there's a lot of frustration, and I suspect the 2024 election, as much as I think Donald Trump is a very effective candidate, I think even more so the record of Joe Biden is going to be the factor that actually is the biggest factor in this election. His ridiculous and abysmal record of how he's treated this country and how he has affected the economy is something that is going to send Democrat voters home in record numbers or across the aisle. I can guarantee you.
That's I encourage everybody to check out Charlemagne the God and his recent opinions on Joe Biden over the last 2 years. They echo yours. Last series of questions, we were talking about, well, you said that you're for marriage counseling, and I want to ask you what that means, or staying married. One of the questions was, how do we split up the states? And it would be very difficult. I did a show on that. And what we found was that when you look at a lot of these states, like here's Georgia, most of Georgia's red. There is a huge blue pocket in the Atlanta area. If we look at Texas, most of Texas is red. There is a urban triangle between Fort Worth, Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio. If we look at Illinois, that only the top right corner is blue, the entire rest is red. Same thing with Oregon. If we look at California, yes, there are a lot of conservatives, lots. My stepdad is a conservative and he lives in LA, but he is surrounded by Democrats. The only area where Republicans are overwhelmingly in the majority is basically in the far north or the mountains. It's almost an even divide between red and blue. Now, yes, there's Republicans in the blue area, but they're massively outnumbered. The only place they're winning is in that far red or basically pushed up against the mountains. When we look at these other states, Georgia, Texas, Illinois, Oregon, would it be impossible to just cut off the little liberal blue section on one corner, given that we've had states split off from other states in the past? Or is this just a pipe dream? There's way more complications behind this, and this really oversimplifies the issue.
Well, I feel like what this information seems to miss is the fact that unaffiliated or independent affiliation is the largest growing voter demographic in the country and has been for almost a decade now. So where are we measuring the independents? You know, we're busy talking about who are the Democrats and who are the Republicans. It's like we're all trying to divide up the situation, but there's another person in this relationship. You know, there are other voters in this relationship. The independents are not being measured. And one of the things I say about Washington, D.C., as a Democrat, your mayor is Democratic. Your council is mostly Democratic. Everybody in the government is a friend of these individuals. We have a lot of cronyism here. They hand out jobs, bonuses, and houses as political gifts all the time as a standard operating procedure in the DC local government. It is what it is. So with all of those benefits available to somebody who can call themselves a Democrat and can participate in the Democrat Party here in Washington, D.C., why would anybody who wasn't passionately against those ideas choose not to be a Democrat? If you could be a Democrat, you would. Now, I'm a Republican, and I'm doing that intentionally because I feel it is important to reshape the Republican Party, and it shares at its core and at its base history of a federation and consensus government. It is my values. But look, if you're an independent and you're in Washington, D.C., if you could stomach calling yourself a Democrat, you would. But you have an eye on your voter registration card. Why is that? I think those are our voters. And I tell my Republican Party that all the time. I think those are our voters that are too intimidated by, one, a very aggressive, agendized Democrat machine, but two, by a completely feckless and messageless Republican Party. We're not giving them an alternative. Wow. So they've chosen the only alternative they have, which is to unaffiliate or to be independent. So that's what I think the problem is. I don't think we can divide up the states. I think the vast majority of Americans, in fact, that is the largest voting bloc right now. I think if you look at it, there's a lot of independents. A lot of people are choosing to deal with this crazy divide we are being given by just pulling out of the fight altogether. And we're not measuring those people. And I think that's a vast misstep in believing that we can divorce.
If independents were, say, 5% of the total voting base, and it was legitimately mostly Republicans and Democrats, would these maps be more true then?
Maybe, but in my state, in the District of Columbia, the Republicans are 5%, 7% of the vote, and the rest of it is split almost evenly between Democrats and independents. So the reality is that independents are actually a very large part. And that's because a lot of people just don't want to subscribe. They don't want to play the battle. They don't believe in the battle. They are independent. They want the best guy for the job. They want the best policies for the job. As soon as our two parties who love to profit off the division start to actually listen to the people and get things done they want, we can see an entirely different political system. There's just as much political clout and political accolades for doing the right thing as there is for doing nothing.
Let's see here. Among the public overall, 38% describe them as independents, while 31% are Democrats and 26% are Republicans, according to Pew Research in 2018. Roughly a third, completely backing up what you said. An overwhelming majority of independents continue to lean toward either the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, among the public overall, 17% are Democratic leaning, while 13% lean to the Republican Party. It's a little bit unclear what their perspectives are, but they certainly are a gigantic number of people who are not being included in this discussion, exactly as you had said. If we look at these maps, we got to know where the independents. Although I did see one study that said that while people are independent and they don't want to associate with the party, they still vote in line with the way that they had traditionally. So I don't want to call myself a Republican, but I traditionally voted for Republicans. I will continue to do so. If we look at it that way, these maps would hold true, but I don't have that data in front of me, so I don't want to make that point. Let's go to the last question. Mm-hmm. There was a Utah governor who, when Marjorie Taylor Greene said we need a national divorce, she says we don't need a national divorce. We need marriage counseling. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We had Donald Trump considered one of the most divisive presidents in America by some. And then in return, we had Joe Biden give a speech in front of 2 active duty Marines in a blood red backdrop where he seemed to call out 78 million people as enemies of the state. Given that we've had the last 2 presidents appear to be highly divisive figures, at least to the other half of America, and the president is essentially the only traditional role as spokesperson for the country, who does marriage counseling for a population of 200 to 300 million people, and what does marriage counseling look like?
I think it's got to be we the people. I got to be honest. I think that I think that we are going to continue to see an attempt to create that divide. I think it benefits anyone who understands the powers of corporatocracy. I think it benefits these major corporations, these big banks, these big globalist entrepreneurs that like us controlled and spending money. It benefits them to erase borders, and it benefits them to be able to control elections. And we control elections by creating divides. So, we certainly see the news narrative impacting elections. That's why we see all of a sudden, oh, there's all of these accusations of sexual abuse that come out just a few weeks before the election. I call it the Herman Cain tactic because they did it first to Herman Cain, where they all of a sudden all these women came out and accused him just a few weeks before the election, where there's no real time to look into these situations and actually determine the truth. After the election, it was determined that clearly those were false cases, and he certainly was vindicated informationally, but he lost the election. So using the divide as a political tool to put the people in office that they want is something that we see quite commonly. So I think that marriage counseling looks like we the people insisting on a conversation. Just like when you are in a marriage, when you are in an actual marriage, the reason you go sit down in front of a counselor is so that you can start communicating about difficult things in a safe environment, in an environment where you feel that somebody else is listening, that somebody else is going to maintain the decorum of the moment, and you can start to have a conversation that's calm and comfortable. And I think there are enough adults of us in this country to start having these conversations in that calm manner and insist that we have these conversations in that calm manner. And if you choose not to try to engage people who have a different political opinion than you, my first question would be to you is why? Why are you choosing to not engage? Because that is a choice that each and every one of us is making individually. And I have found personally, when you start having that conversation, just like you do in marriage counseling, we start to find the things we share. We share the memories. We share the reason we got into this relationship in the first place. We have kids together. We have history together. We start to see those things again. That's what counseling does. And those conversations are entirely possible and capable of happening here in the United States. I myself have engaged Democrats at the congressional level and at the street level. And I've had lots of great conversations, and both of my neighbors are very clear. They vote opposite of me, but we all hang out and barbecue and share adult beverages. So, we need to understand that the real everyday life is our community, is where our values actually stem from. Engaging people and being who we are is how you get that value. We shouldn't be hiding our political beliefs. this idea that we can't talk religion, we can't talk politics, this has helped the divide, not this has made a worse divide, not brought us closer together. This idea that we keep our mouths shut so we don't offend anybody hasn't brought us any closer together. What does bring us closer together is respecting each other's opinions, having your own opinion, asserting your own opinion in a peaceful manner, but respecting the other people's right to have their opinion and listening to that opinion. And that's a conversation. And so I think national marriage counseling comes when you are willing to listen to the other side and when you're willing to speak your truth in a loving fashion, just for the sake of communication, not for the sake of attack or hurting each other, just like we do in a marriage. You know, we can say our truth. I'm unhappy about this in our marriage, but that's certainly a different thing than you big jerk. You don't ever pick up the laundry and you leave it on
Right,
the floor.
right.
That's a very different
Right.
conversation.
Right. So I think what I'm hearing is marriage counseling involves people like us.
Yeah.
Conversations with people who think differently, have different opinions, and you don't try to shout them down or yell them down or call them names. Doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but you actually try to talk with someone who doesn't necessarily think like you. But not even our elites. This is something we, the people, if we want to keep this union together, are going to have to do. Yeah. And that seems to be the major or main solution you're offering is it's up to you as a person if you want to keep your country, and you're going to have to get out there and you're going to have to start talking to other people.
Well, and I can give you guys a direction to go because this is what I use. I don't just do this blindly or instinctively. I've actually studied Dr. Martin Luther King's six principles of nonviolent political interaction. I use these as my life method. This is how I engage everyone on a political level, on an activism level. I come prepared to be humble. I come prepared educationally. I come prepared knowing their side as well as my side. And I come to humbly and politely and with love and compassion communicate and educate. And I come prepared to get a little scuffed up. I come prepared for that, but I come prepared by being prepared to be calm and not to react angrily to other people's anger. I come with a sense of compassion, and you can learn those principles too, and they work ubiquitously. They have taken me in and out of extremely volatile situations with very angry leftists who very much wanted to do real bodily harm, and in fact I've been assaulted by the left, but I've walked out safe to tell about it. And I didn't go in armed, and I didn't go in a bulletproof vest. I had a helmet because I can't control the back of my head, but I have done that. And how have I done that? Using Dr. King's 6 principles of nonviolent political interaction. So go study those principles because they are a lifestyle that will help you to engage the conversation in a way that can genuinely bring this country back from the brink. And I think Dr. King saw a brink very much in his time as well, and hence his work to create a method by which we can get past a vicious and violent and dangerous divide that he saw in his time. So it's not the first time we've been violently and viciously divided. It probably will not be the last time. And I am quite convinced it will not be the last time, because we are certainly not headed for a national divorce. We are headed for a national rectifying as more and more people start to realize that the conversation is there to be had.
Thank you for coming out. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing what you do to try to heal America. Like I said, I don't see many people doing that. Thank you for providing some context. And thank you for believing that even if people have different political perspectives, there is a point about having a conversation. One of the things that I really respected on the phone with you was you go, look, I disagree with Marjorie's recommendation, but I salute her creating a conversation. Correct. You should create a conversation. We should have discussions, and I should be able to disagree with her while saying, yes, I salute the conversation while I disagree with the answer, and that is the proper way for America to function. Am I getting this wrong?
That is our republic. A republic is a federation of individual sovereign states or individuals who operate a consensus form of government. And our consensus is in the fact that we hold votes, and we can unelect the people if we don't like the votes, and we can call and lobby them if we want them to do other votes. We form consensus. It's not a straight up democracy. This isn't brute force and the mob rule. That's not the country we live in. We live in a country of conversations and consensus. That's how our citizen governance works. It will continue to work. The founders created a fantastic system, and they certainly hoped that we would continue to grow it and strengthen it. And it has certainly been weathered over time, but is still just as functional as the day it was created. Consensus form of government, protecting our constitutional rights, and speaking and engaging with people who we may not agree with, but we share more in agreement. As Reagan said, the 80% rule. The person I agree with, 80%, is not my enemy. That's my friend.
So this is a little bit unfair to the 29 other people that I've done interviews with, because I think you just gave a fantastic last thought, but I'm a stickler for the rules. I didn't say it yet. I always ask guests two things. Is there anyone you would recommend who'd be willing to be part of a honest conversation? They could be on the left, they could be on the right, they could have whatever opinion. And is there something you'd like to leave the audience with that a week from now, they're like, oh, I don't really remember the whole interview. I remember a little bit, but there was something this woman said, and I just can't get it out of my head. What would be that sticky thought you'd like to leave the audience with?
I would think that the most important thing, the sticky thought that I would hope you get left with from listening to this interview and listening to me talk, is a burning curiosity to start engaging people who might agree differently with you. A burning urge to start having conversations. Put on your favorite political shirt, but do it with a smile. Do it with a friendly face. What I do, I wear this hat. I wear this hat a lot in Washington, D.C. I wear this hat a lot, but I do it with a smile. I do it with a friendly wave. I do it with, hi, how you doing? I love that dress. I love that hairstyle. Be an ambassador for this idea of the United States. Be American. That we are this melting pot. We are this unity. Have that on a personal level, and certainly don't stand down to your politicians. Don't stand down to the other side because they didn't vote for you. They are there. They are your representative, whether or not you voted for them, whether or not they share your political party. So it's your job as their employer to tell them what they should be doing, to let them know what you expect from them. Both of those things, in my personal experience, have led to great unity. Actually, I don't feel this great divide that everyone says you might expect in Washington, D.C. How can you live in the swamp? They say, Suzzanne. It's so blue. I don't feel it. I feel a lot of unity. I feel a lot of shared community. And yes, sometimes these conversations get a little spicy, but that's the fun of life. That's the fun of life. In reality, I share more with my neighbors than I do than I disagree with. And in reality, so do our politicians. But maybe they don't know how to make money off that. Maybe they don't know how to get the donor emails going with that. So call them up and tell them what you want them to do and how to do their job better. Frankly, we the people do know how. We know what we want. We know we want real policies that benefit the American people. And what they're going to find is that people from both sides of the aisle often want the same things.
So that was outstanding. And I think that was outstanding. And so there's a presidential election in 2024. Any thoughts? We have two candidates not everybody's totally pleased with. Are you considering running, putting your hat in the ring?
Oh no, I'm looking forward to the primary season. Okay. I think the 2016 primary was an amazing opportunity for the grassroots community. A lot of people who got involved in that in that election very much stayed involved once President Trump was in office, even people who didn't vote for him in the primaries. I have a lot of friends who were Ted Cruz supporters, right? No, I'm looking forward to a good, feisty political primary season, and I would hope the Democrats would want the same, but I don't know that it's going to work out that way. That's not kind of how incumbency tends to work. So we'll see what happens over on the Democrat side.
I will just point out that if we're talking about keeping this nation together, you are the only person who seems to be talking the right way about what it's going to take to do that. And I don't see the language, the tone, and the energy that you have, or the passion from either party or any of the top candidates on either side. So, if we want America together, in my opinion, you should be doing the marriage counseling as president. And you're the best candidate I've seen to do it. Honest perspective. Uh, any recommendations? Anybody you know who might be willing to have this conversation? You don't have to tell us here, but we would like to get you thinking. Maybe you could email us later. Any names at all? I hope you see that we don't do gotcha journalism. We will ask some controversial questions, but we're really just trying to get a variety of perspectives out. You know, what you said is what came out. We didn't edit it. It's your perspective. And we're trying to do that with hardcore liberals, hardcore right. We don't care. Just intelligent conversations like you did. The fact is that you really went in depth on a lot of issues. And this is the kind of coverage that I wanted to do because I just don't see the mainstream media doing it on either side. It's mostly insults and name calling in 30-second sound bites, and they consider that a good job. I think that's how societies collapse. So if you have any recommendations, please send it to us. And if you ever talk to Marjorie, if you could let her know, to our knowledge, we are the only people doing in-depth interviews with professors, thought leaders, people, liberals and right, in-depth across America. To my knowledge, nobody's doing anything on this level or this thing. So maybe she might be interested in that. We would love to talk to her, but hey, keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, I don't know if you've had a chance to reach out. And he wouldn't. I don't know that he would ever appreciate that I had recommended him, and I don't have contact information from him. I only have an old email. But fellow comedian and now podcaster Jimmy Dore.
Oh my God, I would love to interview Jimmy Dore.
Yeah, if you can get Jimmy on, I really he came and spoke at the Rage Against the War Machine rally, which was here in Washington D.C. a few months back, which was a bipartisan rally. We had Ron Paul there. They had lots of people from the left there as well. It was a big anti-war rally that crossed partisan lines. Some of the radical leftists poo-pooed it and refused to show up. The organization of Code Pink refused to, but the leader, the president of Code Pink, she herself tweeted that she attended the rally personally, whether her organization wanted to go or not. And though they condemned it, she attended. So it was a pretty great rally, and Jimmy spoke, and he did have some bad things to say about Trump supporters. I think he gets clicks for that, right? But he also has been somebody who's been talking a lot about the real issues, and I feel like what we say over here, he's been pretty red pilled on a lot of things. The Ukraine issue, amongst others. So I'd love to hear his thoughts on this idea of a national divorce, because I would say, as someone who I knew him, back in 2012, many years ago when we were both doing stand up, and I've been on his show back then. He was much more very liberal, and he just liked talking to me because I was sort of the libertarian conservative leaning one to give flavor to his otherwise extremely liberal panel. And what I've seen of his content lately is much more I think where we're at, that there's something more to be had. So I'd love to hear his thoughts and see how much of those thoughts fall into this there is hope method, even though he's a very, I would say, almost Nietzschean kind of person. Sometimes a little hope sneaks out in his message, and I'd love you maybe to poke at it a little bit, see what you could get out of it.
Well said. A little Nietzschean in his message. I always love it when people get verbose. If you have any other recommendations, we don't care if they're liberal or they're right. We're not trying to do agenda reporting. We're trying to get intelligent voices, again, because this is a conversation, like you said, we need to have. And I don't think it does us a service as a country to have sophomore, childish kind of level of conversation.
Well, and I would agree, and maybe reaching out to somebody like Brandon Strzok, who has formed the Walkaway movement and continues to literally talk about people, from the Democrat Party engaging conservative ads. I'd love to see what his thoughts are on the divorce, because he's literally in the process of turning Democrats not even necessarily into Republicans, but just this idea that you don't have to be stuck with the Democrat Party. So his thoughts might be very valuable as well. And I know he's just started a new social media platform, so I know he's certainly willing to talk to people.
Done. Thank you so much. We will send you the recording soon. If you have any other recommendations, we love it. We just want to have honest conversations. Thank you, Suzzanne. Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Appreciate it. This has been a good talk, Marcus. Appreciate you.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.